Joining us now is James Morrow, Sky News host and Daily Telegraph National Affairs editor. James, thank you so much for your time.
Great to be here on the set with you here on the Power Hour.
I just wish it was under different circumstances, considering what we're going to be talking about. But it is so great to have you here on set, this new set of ours. But it's been revealed one of the gunmen was known to ASIO and his father had 6 firearms. So it's been revealed that ASIO examined gunman Naveed Akram 6 years ago over his close ties to a Sydney-based Islamic State terrorism cell. He's right now in hospital under police guard. It's been revealed also that 2 ISIS flags were found in their car at Bondi Beach. James, certainly plenty of concerns that ASIO knew about this person years ago.
And not only that, we've also reported that both father and son spent time in the Philippines recently. Now, in the south of the Philippines, there is an Islamic insurgency and there are known to be terror training camps. So that is going to be another avenue of investigation. Look, this whole thing, besides the horror of the tragedy and the event and the shooting and everything that's led up to it, there are huge questions that need to be answered about what happened with our security services. What happened with, for example, the people who are supposed to be in charge of the gun laws that say if someone at your address has been red flagged by ASIO, you're not getting a gun.
Absolutely.
All of this stuff where Anthony Albanese is talking about restricting firearms even further. No, I'm sorry. This is a distraction from a great deal of failures around laws that already exist. Don't let the Prime Minister get away with this. We now know so much about what these people who are alleged to have done this did and have been associated with. This is a failure of immigration services. This was a failure of law enforcement. And, this is a failure of the Albanese government because they have not funded ASIO properly. ASIO has been warning that they need more money to do the job. There are a huge number of threats out there, real threats, and then Albanese goes out there and tries to distract with, it's the gun laws. I saw him last night on TV saying, and also there's that right-wing extreme out there.
Oh my gosh.
No, I'm sorry. This is anti-Semitism that developed on his watch. This is Islamism, which was allowed to go unchecked on his watch, and he is attempting to distract from this real reality here.
It really is. And we've all been witnessing the horrific rise of anti-Semitism here. We've seen synagogues being burnt down. We've seen anti-Semitic graffiti. We've seen homes targeted. We've seen Jews being targeted and terrorised for years. And now this has happened. And some people are acting surprised. As you alluded to, I think the conversation needs to be about some dangerous ideologies that exist here. People who are in the country who don't want to uphold Australian values, they should not be here, in my opinion. Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke was heckled at Bondi Beach. Let's just take a look.
This is your fault. Blood on your hands, Tony Burke.
Shame, Tony Burke, shame.
Shame on you.
I mean, there is so much anger. And I think...
Pretty understandable.
Absolutely.
Pretty understandable. I mean, you think about the way this government responded after the October 7th attacks in 2023. It has always been weak. It has always been this sort of both sidesing sort of thing. There were preachers in Tony Burke's electorate who were going out and saying the most outrageous sort of things, and there was very little condemnation there. Every talk of anti-Semitism was also met with, and also Islamophobia, this recognition of Palestine, the Harbour Bridge March, which was allowed to go ahead. You had, on the Harbour Bridge, you had people carrying placards of the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah. You had them carrying ISIS flags. You had them carrying flags that were just this side of looking like a Hezbollah flag, but not actually, to stay on the right side of the law. This was all allowed to go ahead. This was tacitly encouraged. And of course, you had the, what were they, 47 or 49 recommendations of Gillian Siegel's report into anti-Semitism. Again, not dealt with, none of them accepted. And here we are. I mean, no one is surprised. I have been talking very closely to the Jewish community for more than 2 years about this. They have all said this is where this will lead, and this government has been so pathetic and so attempting to, maintain this fiction of multiculturalism and allowed this anti-Semitism to fester out of control. I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. I'm greatly saddened. But Tony Burke, I mean, I can see why people are mad.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there, James. It's horrific. I mean, the biggest concern for the past 2 years among the Jewish community is that there would be a death, and now this has happened.
Tony Burke, let's not forget, Tony Burke was the guy who signed off on saying, hey, let's bring in 3,000 Gazans. What kind of message does that send?
And as you spoke about earlier, the anti-Semitism report, I mean, the Albanese government is just sitting on that, not in any rush to implement it. Yeah. James, I actually want to talk to you about the social media ban that came into effect last week in Australia, the world first social media ban for under 16s. On Sunday night, as this terror attack was unfolding, social media was critical in terms of communication. New South Wales Police were using it to communicate with the community to stay away from Bondi, to keep them informed about what was going on. Some of my friends were using it to update their friends and family members that they were safe, and also using it to offer up their homes if people needed refuge, if they needed somewhere to go and hide. But this social media ban for under 16s, how is this going to help those who are under 16 who are normally glued to their phones in a time of crisis?
Well, you know, it's really interesting you talk about that. And that, I think, is one of the unintended consequences of this ban that hasn't been thought through. But I'd also go further than that and say that this actually is something there's a bigger problem that also stems from before this. And this is the attempt by the E-Safety Commissioner to block anything that might be considered, you know, distressing content, because they don't want people to essentially maybe think things that the government doesn't want them to think, or become angry about something that the government doesn't want them to be angry about. You know, it all gets down to this whole idea that the state is restricting the free flow of information, even disturbing information, and that has consequences. And I think the one you've just highlighted is a really real one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, I've noticed some of the left-wing activists who were happy to share pretty horrific, vile posts on social media that were going viral, demonising Israel, you know, horrific stuff about the IDF. All those sorts of posts were happily shared and reshared, and then all of a sudden this attack takes place. And these left-wing activists are saying, stay off your phone, stay off social media, don't watch the vision.
Well, this is really interesting, because they're saying this because what they're trying to do here is they're trying to police what people think and what people feel about this. You know, you see so many people who were demonizing Zionists, or Zios, as they like to call them, you know, demonizing Israel, posting content that could only be considered anti-Semitic, doxing people who were Jewish, trying to get businesses shut down. You know, all sorts of insane 1930s Germany kind of stuff here. Really shocking. Oh, my heart grieves for the Jewish community, these people are saying. Now, I don't buy this one bit. But also, you know, what they want people to do is not see the consequences of the environment that they created and helped fan the fuel of, that then leads to this point where you have people shooting Jews, hunting them down on Sydney's most iconic beach. And, you know, I'll tell you what, it is 8 kilometers as the crow flies from the Sydney Opera House to Bondi Beach. But it's been 2 years and 3 months in the making, that journey of hate.
And on that point, Johnny Bishan had a brilliant commentary piece in The Australian. He said, now they're shocked. The progressive activists, the influencers, the Greens, the podcasters, all those impeccably right-on people who've spent 2 years making Zionists, or Zio, the dirtiest word in the Australian vocabulary, who marched down Oxford Street during the Mardi Gras holding a sign that said, globalise the Intifada. Well done, congratulations, the Intifada is here, mission accomplished. He also writes about the hypocrisy that we're seeing right now. I mean, Green Senator Maureen Faruqi saying that my thoughts are with the Jewish community, at the same community whose state is rogue apparently and genocidal. Abby Chatfield is apparently heartbroken and sickened by the anti-Semitic attack, despite refusing to platform Zionists on her podcasts and despite publicly shaming a person as a genocide supporter. I mean, hearing from them now...
There's so much to unpack there. I mean, the Greens, which, by the way, got comprehensively rinsed at the last election, in large part because they went from a nice party that cared about, you know, furry, cuddly things, and turned into a party that wanted to, you know, run this crazy anti-Israel foreign policy. And people just said, hang on, what's wrong with you guys? Is everything okay at home? To, you know, the whole thing, there was a huge fight about the Mardi Gras and, you know, Queers for Palestine, all this. Like, you know, this is the Mardi Gras here. This is a celebration of gay culture, and they are taking the side of the Palestinians. Explain to me how that works. Well, I can tell you how that works, actually, because we have seen for a long time You know, and this has been going on for decades and decades and decades. This weird thing where the progressive hard left and revolutionary Islamists team up together. Now, it never ends well, but the progressive left never learns this. You know, the same thing happened in Iran in 1979 in the Iranian Revolution. You know, they thought, oh, it's so wonderful, we got rid of the terrible Shah. You know, and then they wind up with the Ayatollah, and then they're all dead or having to leave the country. This is the exact same thing being played out again. This dynamic, you know, was encouraged, I think, by labor to bring these people together as a political force against, you know, the terrible hard right. We hate the right, you know, but we can bring these people into the tent. Because, as they say, there's no enemies to the left.
James Morrow, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Great to get your insights.
Anytime.